Okay. Today's topic is Libun Gamur. We'll talk about a couple of things, and the first one is when is it required to do Libun Gamur? So Libun Gamur is the most intensive form of Kashering, and it basically works for everything. No matter what kind of non-kosher taste is absorbed, it always works. Even when other types of Kashering don't work, Libun Gamur always works. But that's true that it always works, but it's only required to do it in two very specific scenarios. The first one is if the thing that you're kashering is made out of cheres, ceramic, which we've spoken about at other times. That includes things like china and bricks and cement, and some people think that plastic is also cheres, but it includes for sure the things like I mentioned, like cement and china, and so those things cannot be kasher with hagala, and the only way that they can be kasher is with Libun Gamur. And realistically, we don't have any good ways of doing Libun Gamur for cheres. So therefore the people would just say is cheres can't become kasher. If it became treif, it has to be thrown out. Because in theory it could be kasher with Libun Gamur, but in practice that's not so realistic. So we say it can't be kasher. Now Ashkenazim say that glass is similar enough to cheres that it can't be kasher with hagala, but at the same time it can be kasher with Libun Kal, which is a less intense version of Libun than Libun Gamur is. I'll talk in a few minutes about what exactly Libun Kal versus Libun Gamur is, but the idea is it's a lighter version of Libun. So true regular Libun, what we call Libun Gamur, is for cheres, but for glass, which is a little bit like cheres, it could be kasher with Libun Kal. Now, so that was the first reason why you'd have to kasher something with Libun, is because it's made out of cheres. The other reason why something would have to be kasher with Libun Gamur has to do with the way it was used, and that is, if something dry has direct contact with a utensil when it was on or very close to the fire, that needs Libun. For example, in a barbecue grill, the grates of the barbecue grill need Libun Gamur because dry food, like a dry piece of meat, goes right onto the grate, onto the grate, and it's right over the fire. So that part, the grate itself, needs Libun Gamur. But the barbecue chamber could be kasher with hagala or with Libun Kal because it doesn't have any direct contact with the food. It's over the fire, and the food is dry, but it doesn't have direct contact. Or think about a pan that you put into the oven. It needs Libun Gamur because it has direct contact with the tray food that you put into it. But a pot can be kasher with hagala because there's always liquid. There's water or oil in the pot when you cook with it. Or let's say a metal serving tray. So it could also be kasher with hagala because it has direct contact with food, with dry food, which is very hot, but it's off the fire. Okay, so again, in order to require Libun Gamur, it has to be that the food is hot, of course, over the fire, with dry food. But if it's not dry, if it's not direct contact, and if it wasn't over the fire, then it doesn't need Libun Gamur. Now, commercially, the kinds of things that need Libun Gamur are like the floor of an oven that you use for making pizza or making pita or matzah or an oven belt. Those are all things that have direct contact, and they potentially have direct contact with food. And if it had direct contact with something treif, and it's used over the fire, then it needs Libun Gamur. Okay, now within this second rule, which is the second example of something with direct contact that needs to have Libun Gamur, direct contact over the fire, there is a significant exception, and that is Libun Gamur is only required if the belia that we're trying to get out is something which is isser, like it was treif, or it was treif meat, or it was gavinas akum, or something like that. But if what we're trying to get rid of is heter, like kosher dairy, then let's make it from milchiks to parav, usually then hagala would work. And there's a very common example of that, and that is if someone took pizza and they cooked it directly on the grates of their meat oven. Okay, so the pizza is milchiks, and they cooked it in their meat oven. Everything was kosher. It's a kosher meat oven, and they used kosher pizza. Now, if the grates had been used for fleshig within the past 24 hours, so now this oven has absorbed basar b'chalav. It didn't just have kosher meat and kosher dairy; it had basar b'chalav. Well, then it's really treif, so to speak, really treif. Had real isser was absorbed into it. You need to do Libun Gamur. Um, so, but what happens if 24 hours? It's more than 24 hours from when they made the meat till they made the pizza. We made the meat on Sunday, and then they made the pizza on Tuesday. So it's Eina ben Yomer from the meat use and the milchigs use. Now we can't use these grates without kashering them, because these grates are both milchigs and fleischigs. The milchigs from the pizza that we just made on it, and the fleischigs from the meat we made a couple days ago. So we can't use it for either milchigs or fleischigs. Either one of those can't be done, because the milchigs can't be done because of the fleischigs, and the fleischigs can't be done because of the milchigs. So we need to kasher them. But when we're kashering, we're only kashering from heter. We're kashering from kosher meat and from kosher milk that were not basar b'chalav. And because of that, in that case, we could kash them with hagolah or with libun kal. We don't need to do libun gamur. Okay, so in addition to the rules we had said about needing libun gamur, it has to be dry and on the fire and direct contact. But it also has to be isser, which most of the time it is. But this does come up often enough that something that was fleischigs is used for milchigs, and not within 24 hours, then you could kasher with just with hagolah or with libun kal. Okay, so how do you do libun gamur? Okay, I can be talking about libun gamur. How do you do it? So, in order to do libun gamur, the utensil has to be heated up to a very high temperature using a fire. The exact temperature, different opinions. Somewhere in the area of 850 to 950 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 450 to 500 Celsius. I'm not exact, but give or take. And you have to use this tremendous amount of heat. That will do two things. It incinerates any tam that's absorbed into the utensil, and it also destroys any residue that could be on the utensil's surface, on the surface of the utensil. Okay, so it not only does it get what's inside, it burns up what's inside, and it destroys on the outside. Because of that, it's able to you can do libun gamur even if the utensil is not clean, and even if it's been used in the past 24 hours, which is to say is usually for hagolah. We need something to be perfectly clean, because the hagolah water can only get what's absorbed inside. Here, we're going to burn up anything that's on the outside. Don't worry about that. Second is hagolah can only be done when something is eina ben yomer. It hasn't been used in 24 hours, and that's because the time that's going to come out will make the kli treif again. But over here, the time is not going to come out. The hagolah draws the time out of the kli. Libun burns it, incinerates all the time that's in the kli, anything absorbed into the kli, and therefore there's nothing to come out that would get reabsorbed, and therefore you could do it even if it has been used in the past 24 hours. Now, that's great. That's how libun gamur works. But that whole idea that we're going to heat to such high temperatures that we're going to burn everything that's on the outside and that's on the inside is also raises a concern we've talked about in the past, which is anytime there's a possibility that what your kashering will ruin the utensil, then you're not allowed to kasher it. You're not allowed to do that method of kashering, and that's because Chazal were concerned if you do this kashering, you might hold back a little bit and not do a great job because you're afraid of breaking it. So that causes like a conundrum over here, which is like this: the normal way to do libun gamur would be is heat it with this huge, bring in a torch, heat the thing up to crazy high temperatures, and that'll do libun gamur. The problem is that everybody, except for a handful of people who have a lot of experience with torches, etc., everybody else will be afraid to break his pan or his oven grates. Or his oven belt. He's afraid of breaking them. So you can't use a torch. For just about everybody is not allowed to use a torch because, in theory, it would be effective. But the fact that you might break something is a reason why you're not allowed to use that method of kashering. So l'maisa, in practice, the only way to libun gamur is either basically two ideas. One is if you have something that's known and tried and true and built to work in a certain way, and you know that the libun gamur could be accomplished. I'll tell you what I mean in a second. The libun gamur could be accomplished, or it's made specially by engineers, etc., who know what they're doing. So, for most of us, the idea of something that's known to be safe and effective is self-cleaning an oven. You self-clean an oven. Ovens are built to withstand self-cleaning. The materials or whatever it is, or the cycles, however they design it, makes it that it works well, and that gets it hot enough to accomplish libun gamur. So you can self-clean an oven as a form of Libun Gamur because you know it works and you know that it can handle it. Okay, now while we're talking about self-cleaning, I will mention that it's in choosing. Sometimes there's more than one choice of how long the cycle should be for. We recommend people choose the longest cycle, and that's because the longer the cycle is, the better job it is at destroying the residue that's on the surface. So just like they want to do a good job of that, we want to get them all out also. And I'll also mention that self-cleaning is what works. Steam cleaning is not self-cleaning and does not accomplish Libun Gamur. Okay, so one idea is you could do Libun Gamur using some kind of something that is designed specially from the get-go like that, like a self-clean oven that's designed to be able to handle the temperatures that it needs. Okay, that's one way. Okay, the other one is another example of that is if you want to capture the grates of your barbecue. So what we tell people to do is take the grate out of the barbecue, lay it down on the sidewalk, and sandwich it between layers of charcoal, meaning charcoal above and below it, light it up, and let them burn for an hour. So there's an even amount of heating, and the grates can handle it, and that will catch them. That's also going to Libun Gamur. Okay, and that's fine, and it can handle it, and those work. Okay, so these are examples of things where there's a known method of doing it, which is safe, and no one's concerned that it's going to ruin what you're using. Now, but then there's sometimes that something is specially designed with people who really know what they're doing to make it work. And an example which has come up every so often is commercially, which is for an oven belt. So the oven belt runs right through the oven. It could be very expensive. People don't want to have to change it, and they want to do Libun Gamur to it. But if it became treif, or the company is becoming from treif to kosher, so in one place what they did was like this: they turned the oven up to its highest, which is about 500 degrees, and they let the belt run for a while. They turned on the oven got hot, and the belt was circulating. So the belt was getting to already a high temperature, and then at the same time they had built flames, built like special, basically something to make a flame at the end of the oven. Excuse me, so that when the belt comes out of the oven, it get hit with these flames. And since the belt was already hot, and since the belt was it was already getting warm, it was heated up, and it was being heated by these flames that were also heating carefully and slowly, and the whole belt at one time. It ended up working. It was able to accomplish Libun Gamur. It was able to do this without warping or ruining the belts, because it was done the belt was already at an even high temperature. And importantly, plant personnel was creating this. These are people who understand the machinery, what it can and can't handle, and how to design things properly. So there was a confidence that it would work and that it would not ruin anything, and therefore that was considered an effective way to make Libun Gamur. Okay, now I mentioned a couple of times that there's Libun Gamur and Libun Kal. So Libun Gamur means complete, the Libun the way it's supposed to be done, which is basically Libun following the instructions that are brought in the Gemara and Yerushalmi about how Libun is supposed to be done. But then there's another opinion. There's some who hold that Libun Kal also could work. A lighter form of Libun could work. It's similar in that it also Libun Kal also has to be done with a fire. You can't use water. You have to be heat with a fire. But there's big differences between them. Okay, so I'm going to go through some differences, and sort of to show a contrast, I'm going to talk about Libun Gamur, Libun Kal, and I'll throw in Hagala also, even though that's not today's discussion. It's not really about Libun Kal, about Hagala, but I'll throw it in just to show the contrast in them. Okay, and it's in 5 different areas. Okay, so first is the previous use. So Libun Gamur, Libun Kal, you can't kasher unless it had not been used in 24 hours, and the same for Hagala. It has to be Eina Ben Yom when we kasher. As opposed to Libun Gamur, you can kasher even if it had just been used 5 minutes ago with something that was not kosher. You could still Libun Gamur. Okay, so in this way, in most ways, you're going to see, as I talk about this, that Libun Kal is more similar to Hagala than it is to Libun Gamur. Okay, now as far as being clean, Libun Gamur does not have to be clean beforehand because the Libun will destroy everything. Libun Kal and Hagala, it does have to be clean, completely clean beforehand. If you put an actual flame during Libun Kal, if you actually put the flame to touch the equipment rather than just heat up the chamber, then if it's not too much there, then the flame will also destroy it even by Libun Kal. But if you're just heating up the chamber, then that's not going to do the trick. You have to, if the fire is not going right onto the thing, and of course in Hagala it has to be clean also. Okay, next is the materials. Which materials does it work for? Libun Gamur works for any material. Libun Kal works for metal, stone, or glass. It doesn't. It theoretically would work for wood, but of course you can't do Libun Kal on wood because or plastic because it'll just destroy them. So in theory it works, but in practice it doesn't work. And Hashgachah works on metal, stone, and wood. And we've talked about it other times. Some people say it also works for plastic also. Okay, what's the temperature requirement? So for Libun Gamur, this is the big difference. For Libun Gamur, it has to be somewhere in the area of 850, 950 degrees Fahrenheit. For Libun Kal, it has to be hot enough that it would singe a piece of paper on the other side. Meaning, if we're putting, if you put the flame on the, we'll say the left side, on the inside of the pot. That's what you're supposed to do. And the part that touches the food, then the pot that doesn't touch food, the opposite side of the metal. Hard to explain this. How to describe this in words. The other side of it has to reach to the point it's hot enough that it would a piece of paper would be a piece of kaj, a straw, a piece of paper touching to it would burn. And usually we say that means is like heating an oven to 550 for an hour or 475 for an hour and a half. Okay. Now there are exceptions. There's examples where Libun Kal could be done at a lower temperature, but this is what the typical is a Libun Kal. And Hashgachah, and not to compare, just Hashgachah, it has to be 212 degrees. Okay, so we're talking about a very different temperatures. Libun Gamur is 850, 950. Libun Kal is a lot less than that, but it just has to be singed paper on the other side, and Hashgachah has to be like 212. And the last differences between them is when can you do this? So Libun Gamur you could do anytime, as opposed to Libun Kal and Hashgachah that cannot be done on Pesach, just having to do with the way they work. We're not allowed to kasher with them on Pesach from chametz. If it became treif, you could kasher, but not from chametz. Blias cannot be done like that on Pesach. But as opposed to Libun Gamur, you could do anytime, even on Pesach.